No one would give a home to the Apache woman with two children, until the cowboy said, "I have two. Now we are six." This is the story of how six strangers became a family, not through blood, through fire, through gunpowder, through the simple choice to stand together when the whole world turned away. They arrived just after sunrise. The woman walked slowly down the dusty main street of Bitter Springs, Arizona territory. Autumn of 1877. The air smelled of sage and distant rain that would never come. She held her older boy by the hand. The younger one rode her hip, his small arms wrapped around her neck. Three souls moving like shadows, trying not to disturb anyone, hoping to become invisible. Her name was Naira Stonehawk, 28 years old, daughter of a Chiricahua warrior, widow of a white man, mother of two boys who had already seen too much of this world's cruelty. The older boy was Chaitan, 7 years old, named for the falcon. He had his father's light brown eyes and his mother's silence. The kind of child who watched everything and said little. The younger was Maddo, 4 years old, named for the bear. But there was nothing fierce about him now. He pressed his face into his mother's shoulder, hiding from the stares that followed them down the street. And there were stares. The townspeople stopped mid-stride. They paused on wooden porches. They peered through dusty windows. Their expressions carried the same message. You do not belong here. Naira kept her head lowered, not from shame. She had done nothing to be ashamed of. She lowered her head to shield her children from the coldness that scraped deeper than open hatred ever could. She approached the boarding house first. The sign above the door read, Pierce's Rooms, Clean Beds, Fair Rates. Before her hand could touch the door, it swung open. A woman stood in the doorway. Mrs. Agatha Pierce, 48 years old, gray hair pulled tight, eyes like river stones. No, that single word, delivered without hesitation. Naira had not yet spoken, had not asked for anything. We don't have room for your kind here. The door closed. The lock clicked. Maddo lifted his head. Mama, why won't the lady let us in? Naira stroked his hair. She's just busy, little one. We'll find another place. But there was no other place. She tried the general store. The owner saw her through the window. He turned his back and began arranging cans on a shelf he had already organized twice that morning. She tried the church. The minister stood in the doorway. He looked at Naira, looked at her children. Then he stepped backward into the darkness of his church and pulled the door shut without a word. Chaitan tugged his mother's hand. Mama, why do they keep closing doors? She knelt beside him, eye to eye. Some people are afraid of things they don't understand. It's not your fault. It's not mine. Will it always be this way? She kissed his forehead. We'll be all right. We have each other. They walked to the edge of town, to a patch of shade beside an old water trough. Naira sat down on the hard ground, her back against a wooden post. Maddo curled in her lap. Chaitan sat beside her. She was exhausted. 7 weeks on the road. 7 weeks of walking and hiding and sleeping in ditches. 7 weeks since the night that changed everything. She closed her eyes and remembered. Thomas Whitfield, her husband, a trader from Pennsylvania.
I'm just asking, do you want a place to stay?
I do, but I can't put my child in the hands of a stranger.
Then don't put it in my hands. Put it in your own 2 feet.
Who had come west looking for opportunity and found love instead. He had met Naira when her people traded with his caravan. He learned their language, respected their customs, asked her father for permission to marry her in the Apache way. For 6 years, they had been happy. Then Silas Drummond came. Drummond was a wealthy man, former Confederate officer. He had built an empire in Arizona on silver mining and stolen land. Thomas owed him money for supplies. When Thomas refused to pay with Naira's people's territory, Drummond sent his men. They caught Thomas on the road, shot him twice in the chest, left him in the dust. Naira found him the next morning, still breathing, just barely. His last words, "Take the boys, run. Drummond won't stop." She buried him beneath a cottonwood tree, sang the death song her mother had taught her. Then she gathered her children and started walking. That was 7 weeks ago. Now she sat in the dirt of Bitter Springs, wondering if the walking would ever end. Matto shifted in her lap. Mama, when will we have a home? The question cut her deeper than any knife. She stroked his hair. Soon, little one. Soon. But she didn't know where. She didn't know how. Then she heard the sound. Horse hooves. Slow and deliberate. She looked up. A man on horseback had stopped in the middle of the street. He sat motionless in the saddle watching her. Not with suspicion, not with disgust, just watching. He was perhaps 38 years old. Weathered face, gray at his temples, wide-brimmed hat, a vest repaired more than once, a Colt revolver at his hip that spoke of experience rather than threat. For a long moment, neither moved. Then the man swung down from his horse. He removed his hat, and he walked toward her with steady steps. Naira tensed, her arms tightened around Matto. But the man stopped a few feet away. He crouched down, lowered himself to the children's level. You boys hungry? Matto nodded before Naira could stop him. The man reached into his saddlebag and pulled out hardtack and dried meat. Simple food. He handed it to Chaitan. Go ahead, it's not much, but it'll fill your belly. Chaitan looked at his mother. She hesitated, then nodded. The boys ate. The man turned his gaze to Naira. How long since they had a real meal? 3 days. He nodded slowly. I'm Josiah Redfield. Got a ranch about 6 miles east of here. Naira said nothing, waiting for the catch. But Josiah just looked at her. Really looked. Saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the strength beneath it. I have 2 kids of my own. Lost their mother 2 years back. He paused. The words that came next were simple, quiet, but they carried a weight that settled into the air like the first drops of rain after a long drought. I have 2. Now we are 6. Come home with me. Naira stared at him. Why? Because no one who loves their children the way you do should have to face this world alone. She searched his face for deception, found none. Chaitan tugged her sleeve. Mama? She looked at Josiah Redfield, at his weathered face, his steady eyes, his outstretched hand. She placed her hand in his. All right. Josiah helped her to her feet. He walked to the livery stable at the end of the street, paid the owner $2 for a wagon rental, and loaded the 3 of them into the back with blankets and a canteen of fresh water. As the wagon rolled out of Bitter Springs, Naira looked back at the town that had rejected her. She would never forget this place, but she would never return either. The Redfield Ranch sat in a small valley surrounded by red rock formations. A modest wooden house with a stone chimney, a barn that needed paint, a corral with 2 horses.
Aren't you afraid?
Bringing me home means inviting trouble.
I am afraid. But what I fear most is seeing a mother exhausted and no one offering a helping hand.
A vegetable garden struggling against the Arizona sun. Josiah helped Naira and the boys down from the wagon. As their feet touched the dirt, the front door of the house swung open. A girl ran out, 9 years old, brown hair and a messy ponytail. She wore boys' clothing and moved with the confidence of someone who had learned to survive without a mother. Pa? Who are they? Della, this is Naira, and her boys, Chaitan and Matto. They're going to be staying with us. Della's expression hardened. Staying? For how long? For as long as they need. But Ma's only been gone 2 years, and now you're bringing strangers into her house. She turned and ran back inside. The door slammed behind her. Naira touched Josiah's arm. Maybe this was a mistake. She's hurting, has been since Mary died, but hurt doesn't heal by keeping people away. A smaller figure appeared in the doorway. A boy, 6 years old, sandy hair and curious eyes. Hi, I'm Caleb. You want to see my dog? His name's Rusty. Matto looked up at his mother. For the first time in weeks, His eyes held something other than fear. Naira nodded. Go ahead. The three boys disappeared around the side of the house. Josiah watched them go. Kids figure things out faster than adults. Over the following days, the ranch found a new rhythm. Naira worked alongside Josiah, mending fences, feeding horses, hauling water. When he expressed surprise at her skill with tools, she said, "My father believed women should know everything men know, because men die, and the living have to keep going." On the fifth night, Naira heard crying from Della's room. She went to her, sat on the edge of the bed, waited. Della looked up, face wet with tears. "What do you want?" "Nothing. I just thought you shouldn't have to cry alone." Silence stretched between them. Then Della asked, "Do you miss your mother?" "Every day." "She died when I was your age." "My ma died fast. One day she was fine. 3 days later, she was gone. I never got to tell her I was sorry." "Sorry for what?" "We had a fight the day before she got sick. I told her I hated her." The tears came fresh. "She died thinking I hated her." Naira reached out slowly. The girl didn't pull away. "Your mother knew you didn't hate her. Mothers always know." Then Della asked something unexpected. "What about your husband, Chaitan's father?" Naira was quiet for a moment. "His name was Thomas. He was a white man, a trader. He learned my people's language and married me in the Apache way." "What happened to him?" "He was killed by a man named Drummond, the same man who is hunting us now." She didn't realize Josiah was standing in the hallway listening, but he heard every word. And it explained everything about why he had felt compelled to help her. They were both carrying the weight of murdered spouses. They were both running from Silas Drummond. On the seventh morning, Josiah was feeding the horses when he heard hoofbeats. 3 riders approached. The lead man was Virgil Cobb, 35 years old, hired gun, cold eyes that had seen too much death. Josiah stepped out of the barn. His hand rested near his holster. "What do you want, Virgil?" Virgil tossed a folded paper in the dirt. "Drummond sends his regards. You've got 3 days to send the Apache woman packing. After that, this ranch becomes Drummond's property." Josiah didn't bend to pick up the paper. "Tell Drummond I said no." "You sure?" "He's got 30 men." Josiah's voice went quiet, the kind of quiet that made smart men nervous. "I killed men at Chickamauga, Shiloh, Gettysburg. If Drummond wants this land, he can come take it himself, and I'll put a bullet in him just like I did in '63. Virgil's smile faltered. 3 days, Redfield." The riders galloped away. That night, Josiah told Naira everything. He told her about the war, about the things he'd seen and done. He told her about Mary, a free black woman he'd met in Missouri. They'd married in secret because the law wouldn't recognize their union. They'd come to Arizona hoping to escape the hate. "The hate followed us," he said.
If I had done things differently, maybe she would still be here.
No. I've only learned to get back on my feet for the sake of the children watching.
"Mary got sick 2 years ago, but before she got sick, our well water started tasting strange. I found dead animals near the spring." "Drummond. I can't prove it, but I know." Naira understood then. "We're the same," she said quietly. "Both of us carrying ghosts. Maybe that's why we found each other." On the 10th night, Naira woke to the smell of smoke. The barn was burning. She ran outside. Josiah was already there, pulling the horses to safety. Della and Chaitan helped with buckets and blankets. By dawn, the barn was a smoking ruin. In the ashes, Josiah found a silver ring, engraved with the initials S.D. Silas Drummond. "He wants us to run," Naira said. "Then he doesn't know us very well." Josiah began loading his Winchester. "I'm going to town. There are people there who hate Drummond as much as we do." The alliance came together faster than expected. Garrett McCoy, the blacksmith, Diego and Rafael Vega, brothers who had fought in the Mexican army. Widow Harmon, whose husband Drummond had killed. 3 farmers paying protection money for years. And Minister Ezekiel Carver, seeking redemption for every door he had closed. 8 people, armed with shotguns and rifles. They gathered at the Redfield Ranch on the 14th night. The plan, wait for Drummond's attack, then defend from fortified positions. But Josiah had another idea. Drummond won't expect us to come to him. We hit his mansion first, cut the head off the snake. The group rode out at midnight, 8 riders, moving fast and quiet through the Arizona darkness. They reached Drummond's mansion at 2 in the morning. The large adobe house sat on a hill overlooking the valley. Expensive, imposing, a monument to greed. Josiah signaled for the group to spread out. McCoy took the left flank. The Vega brothers took the right. The farmers covered the back. Josiah approached the front door, kicked it open, empty. The house was dark and silent. No guards, no servants, no Drummond. Diego came running from the side of the house. "Josiah! The stables are empty too. All the horses are gone." A cold realization hit Josiah like a fist to the gut. This was a trap. "The ranch," he breathed. "He's going for the ranch." Nara was there, with the children, with only a Winchester and her courage. Josiah sprinted to his horse. "Ride, everyone ride!" The 6-mile journey back to the ranch took 15 minutes at full gallop, the longest 15 minutes of Josiah's life. As they crested the final hill, he saw the torches, 20 of them, surrounding his home. Drummond's men, Drummond himself on his black stallion, shouting orders. And on the roof of the house, a single figure, Naira, the Winchester in her hands, holding them off. She had barricaded the doors, put the children in the cellar, and climbed to the roof to make her stand. 1 woman against 20 men, and she was winning. 3 bodies lay in the dirt around the house. Drummond's men were taking cover behind the fence, afraid to approach. Josiah raised his rifle and fired. One of Drummond's men dropped. The sound of his shot announced their arrival. 8 riders came thundering down the hill, guns blazing. Chaos erupted. McCoy's shotgun roared. The Vega brothers fired with military precision. The farmers fought with the desperate courage of men who had nothing left to lose. Drummond's hired guns scattered. Some ran, some fought, some died. Virgil Cobb tried to circle around to the back of the house. Naira spotted him from the roof. She aimed carefully, squeezed the trigger. The bullet hit his knee. He went down screaming. In the cellar, Della heard footsteps above. A man.
If you regret it, I'll take the child away immediately.
I don't regret it.
Why?
Because from the moment you walk through this gate,
Man's shadow fell across the entrance. She looked at Shaitan, at the small knife Josiah had given him. The man's face appeared in the doorway. Della raised her pistol. Her hands trembled. She fired. The shot hit his shoulder. He tumbled down the stairs. Shaitan was on him instantly, the knife pressed against his throat. "Don't move." The 7-year-old's voice was ice. Caleb shielded Matto with his own body, keeping the younger boy's eyes covered. Outside, the fight was ending. Drummond's men were running or surrendering. 12 of them lay wounded or dead. The rest had fled into the darkness. Only Drummond remained. He faced Josiah in the open space between the house and the ruined barn. 2 men who had been enemies for 15 years. "You think this changes anything?" Drummond spat. "I'll come back. With 50 men. 100. "No." Josiah's voice was calm. "You won't." They drew simultaneously. 2 shots echoed across the valley. Drummond fell. The bullet had found his chest. He lay on his back, blood spreading beneath him. Josiah stumbled. The bullet had hit his left shoulder. Painful, not fatal. Naira climbed down from the roof and walked to where Drummond lay. His eyes were still open, his breathing ragged. She picked up his fallen pistol, stood over him. "Do it," he wheezed. "Prove you're the savage I always said you were." Naira looked at the gun in her hand. She thought about Thomas, about the months of running, about everything this man had taken from her. Then she looked at the house, at the cellar door where her children would soon emerge, at Della watching from the doorway. She lowered the gun. "No, you don't get to make me into what you think I am." She dropped the weapon in the dirt. "You'll live, and you'll remember. Every day for the rest of your life, you'll remember that an Apache woman stood over you and chose mercy." She turned to Josiah. "Tie him up, him and Virgil both. We're taking them to the federal marshal in Tucson." Drummond closed his eyes, defeated, not just in body, in spirit. 4 months later, spring 1878, the federal marshal had taken Drummond and Virgil Cobb into custody. The trial was scheduled for June. With the testimony of Widow Harmon, the Vega brothers, and a dozen other witnesses, conviction was certain. Drummond would spend the rest of his life in Yuma Territorial Prison. Virgil Cobb, unable to walk after Naira's bullets shattered his knee, had already confessed to everything in exchange for a lighter sentence. He would serve 20 years. The Redfield Ranch had grown. New barn, expanded corral, a vegetable garden that actually produced something worth eating. Naira had started a horse training business using Apache techniques her father had taught her. Ranchers came from 50 miles away to buy her horses. Some even tipped their hats to her on the street. The children had changed too. Della and Shaitan were inseparable now. She taught him to read. He taught her to track animals. They raced horses across the valley, arguing about who won even when the answer was obvious. Caleb and Matto had become brothers in everything but blood. They shared a room, shared secrets, shared the easy laughter of children who had finally found safety. On a warm afternoon, Josiah and Naira stood by the fence, watching the 4 children ride across the meadow. Della in the lead, Chaitan close behind, Caleb and Matto laughing as they tried to keep up. "Thomas would have liked this place," Naira said quietly. "Mary would have liked you." Josiah paused. "She would have said you belonged here." They stood in comfortable silence, shoulders almost touching. "You ever regret it?" Josiah asked. "Coming to Bitter Springs?" Naira shook her head. "I regret not coming sooner." Della's voice echoed across the meadow. "Papa, Naira, come watch. I'm going to beat Chaitan this time." Josiah smiled. It was the first time Della had called Naira by name without hesitation, without resentment. "Sounds like we're being summoned," he said. They walked together toward the meadow, toward the children, toward the life they had built from the ashes of everything they had lost. Narrator's voice, and so 6 people became a family, not through blood, through fire, through standing together when the world demanded they stand apart. Josiah Redfield had said, "I have 2. Now we are 6. 6 bullets in a revolver can change everything. But sometimes 6 people, the right people at the right time, can change everything too." In the years that followed, the story of the Redfield family spread across the territory. They became a legend, a reminder that home isn't where you're born. It's where you choose to stay. And family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shares your struggle. Silas Drummond died in Yuma prison 3 years later, alone, forgotten. The empire he built crumbled without him, but the Redfield Ranch endured. The children grew up. They had children of their own, and they passed down the story, generation after generation. The story of the Apache woman who walked into a town where every door was closed, and the cowboy who opened the only door that mattered. If you want to hear more stories of the American frontier, stories of courage, sacrifice, and the bonds that hold us together, subscribe to this channel. Next time, the legend of Chaitan Redfield, the half-Apache boy who became the first mixed-blood sheriff in Arizona Territory.
This story leaves a very clear lesson. Families are not just made of blood, but of choices and the courage to stand by each other. The Apache woman and her 2 children entered town with the faint hope of a home. But what they received were slammed doors and cold stares. The most terrifying thing is not the open hatred, but the indifference. When people silently turn their backs, considering the suffering of others unrelated. But it was in that dark moment that a cowboy did something simple yet powerful. He didn't ask who they were, didn't judge their past. He just saw an exhausted mother and 2 hungry children. A single sentence. I have 2. Now we are 6. Transformed compassion into action, turning kindness into a true home. The second lesson is the power of unity. When evil uses violence and power to force others to bow down, a single family is easily crushed. But when those who had been hurt, the blacksmith, the 2 immigrant brothers, the widow, the exploited farmers, stand together, they form a wall that evil finds difficult to penetrate. And the most profound lesson lies in the woman's final choice. She had every reason to seek revenge, but she did not let her enemy decide her nature. True strength is not about destroying the opponent, but about preserving one's dignity when having the power to do the opposite. She chose compassion to protect her child's future, to prove that pain cannot turn one into the person who inflicted it. Ultimately, the story reminds us that sometimes, just one person opening a door at the right time can save another's life.